Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. Perhaps one of the most important and necessary statements to, in some sense, be acknowledged by any self aware creature. In some sense, fear not your speed. We are a creature, and we know that we're a creature because we identify with a world. And when we look at life, we see we are familiar and acquainted with the creature. And believe it or not, it's not even from the beginning of birth. It's like by the age of whenever the child feels like an individual, it starts kind of having linear memory. Before linear memory, there is non-linear memory. That means you as an intelligence are remembering things before thinking of yourself as a character in a story. So there is a non-linear memory, and over this non-linear memory, the non-linear memory is pretty much how you're being the whole moment. Your mind is being the whole moment. The linear memory is when you become an individual. And so, like they say, young children, they don't have their individuality yet. So, like most parents, the whole point of the parenting is that they manage to kind of give the child a proper reflection. It's like, you see, it's easy to find a mirror for your body, but you can't find a mirror for your mind. And really, the mirror for your mind is how the world is occurring for you and how there's others engaging you. In this life, I was happy. I felt blessed that I had the ears to listen to some advice that was given to me. You know, that means most people hear phenomena, but they're so focused on the free will's expression, they don't even look at what the free will is doing. We are kind of reacting to a strange emptiness, subconsciously. And this reaction against emptiness is another way of saying trying to grab or trying to express. It's like while you're in Wonderland, it's like if you're sitting at the restaurant table, it's like probably like it's a good time to order. You know, utilize the advantage. What I'm trying to get to is that like the same way there's a person driving a car, there is a subjective characterhood that is not visible but seems to be moving the body in the visible. That means it's really up for great dispute that are we just this physical body, or is the mind like a field? So it's kind of like one of those mystical questions when you are alone with your own soul, where the question comes, where is the discrimination? That means if you just accept reality, when would the discrimination come that there's more than reality? And then if you just accept imagination, you're kind of like, okay, when will the discrimination for reality, the discretion for reality come? So it's pretty much eyes are opening up in this world based on what they get exposed to. It's like it's not just the parents of children spoon feeding them. the world, the environment, the society, the politics of the land, the politics of cultural meaning and value. It's kind of like right now, let me tell you what it is. Civilization 1.0, it's like this giant business that has a lot of employees in it. Okay? Now, most of the employees are not working and the civilization doesn't care. The civilization doesn't care for its update, because if we were in a conscious civilization, leaders should be coming out and in some sense asking for the acceleration of all avenues. That means it doesn't matter if you're a shoemaker, update what you're doing. Doesn't matter if you are a tech mogul, update. Do you know what I mean? Like the human species is not like a picture in a painting. That's why you can't find happiness, and if you do, that's weird. It's weird in a changing world to be only in one state all the time, you know? So for me, it's like, I'm like, what is this? The moment I become happy, suddenly I can become sad. The moment I'm sad is the only time I can suddenly become happy. Do you see what I mean? It's this game of shapes, the game of shapes that occurs behind the eyes. So anyways, this idea of fear not your speed. Why? Why should that be said? Why should one human being look at another human being and be like, don't fear how fast you can go? One basic reason, very simple reason, is that you can attempt something on this planet while you're alive at 100%, at 90%, 80%, 70, 60, 50, 40, 10, you know, or not even attempt. These are like, these are accessible. These, you know, you can live at different intensities or with different senses of importance, you know. I had designed this science fiction narrative, you know, where I thought of this hilarious situation for the human species and future alien contact. So imagine, in some sense, this is like a parallel version of Earth. It's science fiction, what I'm sharing with you. It's my own science fiction work. But I'm telling you, it's worth sharing, you know. Pretty much there's this civilization. They make an extraterrestrial civilization makes contact with them, and that extraterrestrial civilization seems peaceful. So human beings are like, whoa, these are peaceful, civilized kind of creatures communicating with us, you know. And so that civilization comes down to Earth. Their leader comes down to Earth just to tell the Earth government. Let's say by that time we're one government, like we're one planet, like we remembered our singularity. So let's say at that point the alien comes down. Let me see. The alien comes down. How do I write it? Pretty much the idea is it's an extraterrestrial contact. There's this extraterrestrial species that is going to each species. Think as if like there's more than one species that makes an extraterrestrial contact with Earth in this story. The first species is just there to say that this high advanced alien species is going to planet and asking, literally communicating with with that civilization, with that species. You know, so imagine this alien kind of overlord kind of setting, and this alien overlord is going and asking every species, every kind of primitive kind of species, becoming galactic, you know, ask them in some sense. What was it? Oh yeah, I remember. To love yourself, do you love yourself or hate yourself? And so the first extraterrestrial that I come to Earth to warn them about, this advanced alien extraterrestrial that's going to come and ask this question, do you love yourself or hate yourself? And in that situation, so people on Earth, the whole hilarious thing about this, the reason I'm sharing this story, because the people on Earth, they start this heavy surveillance where they're like, this alien extraterrestrial, the second extraterrestrial alien can appear out of nowhere, and we can't have any depressed or stressed human beings suddenly saying we hate ourselves to this alien. So the world government in the science fiction story, uh, I've crafted, it's kind of like the government's like, imagine police killing depressed people, in massive number. And so the idea of this was simply because if the alien comes down and they give the wrong response, the whole species goes extinct. So it sets this whole moral argument. Guys, you don't know, I've kind of like, if there were parallel versions of Earth, that's kind of like, you can say, the glory of science fiction. To show the what if without really being there. Anyways, if the person loves their moment, you accelerate. When you are comfortable, if you notice, your skill is intact. The signal of skill is intact. It's a resonance. It's like a rhythm, right? For example, like you can notice, like when a person may be clumsy at work, but suddenly in the shower they're an expert somehow. So it becomes that it's like in a domain of comfort without the stress of an overwatch, which is kind of torture in corporate culture, you know. Without the stress of an overwatch, people suddenly, when they feel free, they can actually use their own free will. You see, this is the whole psychological argument between telling someone what to do, is that better, or in some sense, not telling them, but kind of living as if you're in the context of that already. You know? We are advancing towards uh, a confrontation beyond objective phenomena only, and a confrontation of the moment beyond just subjective phenomena. So it's as if we are creatures that have played as objects and as subjects for way too long. We've been actors of this game. Now we are wondering about what are the options. Now, one option is we create a world inside our world and become gods that way. The other way is we realize our world is inside another, and then we naturally shift. You see, the question is not whether human beings are going to evolve into a collective being or not. It's just like that's nothing to worry about. The question is, they will, and how will they? Will it be through a sort of digital? Every person's head is connected to the same, what do you call it, computer, and we're all united. We're like one being that way. Is it in some sense human beings naturally, literally, we're an energetic phenomena, and this energy reaches a point where it matures over the ways it has perceived itself so far? So that means it's like we're gonna, civilization might get to a weird place where if you ask someone what are you, the person literally can't tell you anything, because they're identifying with not just the content in their whole moment of awareness. They're identifying as the awareness. So you see, here's the difference between um, an ancient Vedic yogi and the average man, as Mr. Within finds. Imagine the self as the concept, The world is the context. Right now, we say, where did the creature come from? It came from the world. Now, where is the meaning of the world coming from? It's coming from the creature, from the free will, from the self, from the individuals. The ancient Vedic yogi, compared to the average man, had literally reversed that relationship. So we think the center of our attention is the material constitution. So literally, we're physical. We think we're physical, and this physicality is leading to some sort of unknown simulation of humanhood. You know, but it's like the mystics saw it in reverse. The mystics saw the unknown first, therefore knowledge dissolved into experience. You know, so that means the mind is like a vehicle where after the lifetime you step out of it. But you don't step out of it as an archetype. It's more like a return to how you're being before you do anything. Because memory, one way of saying it is like, yeah, the person's just like literally like a camera taking pictures, or another way of seeing memory is that you're like an iceberg, and when you kind of melt out of that solidity, you get access to the whole ocean, you know? There's something very crucial, I think, in the experience of human life. And that is to wonder about how there can be direction, how there can be, how there can be truth in a changing world without that truth also changing. You see, it's like the concept of truth needs to evolve now. Not just what we think is true. And how can the concept of truth evolve? It pretty much evolves with who thinks, like, check it out. There's some people in the world right now, okay? Like Michael Talbot, if I remember his name correctly, was one of them, right? He wrote this book called The Holographic Universe, which I never read, but I saw his interview. And this man considers that we're in a simulation. Now, it's unknown whether this simulation is still in the past or in the future. That means there was this kind of author that wrote that he thinks 2000, like the 2000 onwards, it's actually still a simulation from 1948 where they made some sort of like simulation machine, you know. I think our knowledge is simply arising from what we are, not just what we may like take in, or you're not like just your conditioning. The conditioning is a part of you can say. Anyways, I'm just trying to get to this point that your outer realms are objective, your inner realms are subjective, and you shouldn't fear speed, because inevitably in the future people are going to go at fast speeds. So when it comes to novelty, everybody's waiting for their own permission. What that means is the thing about writer's block is that the writer is blocked because the writer thinks he's making a masterpiece, and it has to be a certain way. But when you don't have certain expectations, there's freedom of the inner landscape, access to the inner landscape. That means it's kind of also in speech. Like I've pretty much, I could say, like, I mean, everybody, whether they know it or not, have been observing communication. You can't be a human being on this earth without communicating with something. Even if you're not around human beings, you're communicating with nature. Do you know? It doesn't mean like our design is an engager. What does that mean? That means we are designed to engage the world we're designed in. Do you see? So when I say fear not your speed, because the mind, in some sense, is, how can I tell you? When you're younger, something feels like oh man, this is so heavy to move. But when you get older, you're like, that thing was never heavy. Really, guys, um, I don't know. I feel we, on some level, may the voice of discretion find itself in the mirror. You're a creature that can navigate and you can engage reality. Life is kind of like you're a candle. There's a certain level of consciousness, one third of it you're asleep, one third of it you're pretty much mobile and engaging, and the other third it's like pretty much your free will feels it's an individual. That means it's like somebody waiting at the doctor's office. Really, in that moment, they're not being anything. Like if you ask the belief of someone who's waiting, they'll be like, "What do you want me to say? I'm still waiting." You know. I have experienced upon the discovery that the substratum of my personality is actually the presence of the whole moment. I stopped fearing my memories. I stopped fearing phenomena in the inner realms. That means the moment you like fear is a choice. I'm telling you, it's a choice because whenever you're afraid, you can still do something. You might be shocked, but you can still do something in fear, right? And there has to be like, here's the thing. It's as if I think at a time of war, at least there's a fragmentation of the psyche when it's in chaos. So imagine anytime anything chaotic happens, the chaotic energy tends to be like an explosion. Like suddenly, it tends to be like Shiva. And order is Brahman. That means it's the creative force. That means there's like right now as we're existing, there's a dimension where phenomena is going towards joining each other, and there is a dimension where things are being pushed away from each other. I feel Mr. Within is saying this, and I'm saying this with a sort of honor for the species, that there is something where it's kind of like there is anti-thought. Just we have like matter, and we have the notions of antimatter. Now, somehow evolution has made the human being appear as a subject to itself. So it's like the anti-subject. And the anti-subject is not an object. That means every dimension has two doors. Two doors. One door leads to the emptiness of that dimension. One door leads to the fullness of that dimension. Inevitably, the person will realize overall those two doors are the same door. That means imagine you're hilariously in a room where you go that has two doors. You go through one of the doors and you come out from the other side. It's as if they're connected. Infinity and the void are like they are like brother and sister. They are like they are like how can I tell you? I mean, you can't really give the void and infinity an identity. I want you, dear listener, to just, for your own sake, you can have a piece of paper beside you if you want to write something, but I want you to wonder what exactly 4,000 years from now will look like. Just try. Just try to wonder what 4,000 years will look like. And if you try honestly, you will notice there is an inconceivable threshold. The inconceivability threshold. That means you're reaching a point of your study, of your concentration on a phenomena where the phenomena is losing meaning. So the attention can move. Right now you may feel that your body and mind are happening at the same speed, but I'm telling you it is not. When you look at the organs of the body, even though we're one body, the organs are occurring at different speeds. Do you see the cells have different abidances to different rhythms? So I am realizing that the fragmentation of the human species is inevitably leading to the singular. That means imagine we see what anarchy looks like. Imagine like chaos becomes a reality. Where else will that chaos have to go after ultimate anarchy? Imagine you're evil right now. Imagine you listening to me, you're a person who's evil. Okay? Let's say you became the most evil. You became the ultimate of evil. Then what? Then what when you have reached the mountain peak? Do you see what I mean? It's the same with order. Imagine you're a good person right now. What happens after you reach the ultimate of goodness? What happens after man in some sense idolizes the duality? For me, I'm telling you, every person who feels they're a thought, you're a duality worshiper. You're worshipping uh, the codependence of the ultimate values of the spectrum. Like when we speak about darkness, how can you speak about darkness without light? Like if a person is mindful, it's not like all concepts are one images. Sometimes they're codependent. Some concepts are even mysteries, like verbs. Verbs conceptually are mysterious, they're dynamic. That's why when they asked Buckminster Fuller, what is God to you, bro? And Buckminster Fuller looked back and said, it is not a noun that I can tell you. It is a verb. It is, as Alfred Whitehead would say, a process. We are not just particles here, we're a process. And when you acknowledge life as a process, there is a filter, like imagine every person has this bubble around them. Okay? This bubble is what you are afraid that if you lose, you are not how the world has seen you so far. It's like you can be an atheist, but you can say the fear of that atheist as, let's say, a public figure, that atheist strangely has a fear of the audience. And it's as if what the atheist can't conceive the minds of the audience. Like those people who get nervous on stage, their initial error is that they think they know what the audience sees. Like, I'm not sitting here assuming I know who you are, you know? And I'm pretty sure most people are listening to me, and they realize they don't know who I am. Do you know? So that means there is a sacred law in nature where the mind's sight has its privacy policy, its existential privacy policy. That means your imagination is not visible to others. I mean, people may on a cellular level, like it's not that. Have you noticed this, guys? When a person, they say read a mind, or the person reads thoughts. Have you ever wondered about that idiom, that saying they have? It's like this person just read my mind. Read my mind. That means there was an open book. That means the mind is like a piano key giving off a sound, a resonance. So right now as I'm speaking, maybe, who knows, maybe in some dimension, like it's just sound to some creatures, like a random song has just begun in like another dimension. Do you know what I mean? One thing is clear, guys, and I've spoken about it in my other talks as the sober state. Civilization is moving towards higher speed. Higher speed means every profession has to confront chaos, but not an ultimate chaos, the chaos of changing. Like we're not just surviving in the fittest way. If you notice, it's not just evolution, it's evolution adjusted to the speed of outcome. That means it's not enough that you survive, you want to succeed. How many children are opening their eyes and they think this world is a failing system and they're like, all right, I'm going to climb the mountain of my own success. And once, even if, and let's say there's the 50 coin flip chance they get the success. You know, who knows? You could be the least deserving person and suddenly get success, and you could be the most deserving person. It's like a coin flip. The future is a coin flip, at best. At worst, it's multiple coins flipping. We have to create an alphabet of universal values which is going to act as the mind field of advanced behavior. That means your behavior is not just based on what's happened to you and who you are, it's also based on how far you see in the moment. So I'll give you an example. Like, there was a time, guys, I was afraid of heights. I was afraid of heights. You know, like I would go on the roller coaster and I would sit like on the, like sometimes like there was no choice one time. Like I sat on the front of this roller coaster and it was like this giant yellow roller coaster. Sorry, not at the front. I didn't sit at the front of that one. But pretty much it was like an overwhelming experience. The first time I went on the ride, I kept my eyes closed. Like literally I couldn't even breathe. Like there was a point where I was like, okay, if this roller coaster goes over 1 minute, I might pass out. You know what I mean? Like it was that overwhelming. Then something changed. I found an insight. You know? I saw a rare thought fly by. And I got on the roller coaster, guys, and I never feared the roller coaster. I realized I was fearing it because I thought I couldn't look at it. So the next time I sat at the front of the roller coaster, but in my mind, check this out, I was looking not at the front, I was looking like 10 meters ahead. So I sat on the roller coaster and I was kind of like mainly observant through my peripheral vision, and imagine if there was a laser beam from my eyesight like 10 meters ahead on the railing of where the roller coaster was going. I was just looking like ahead before, like I noticed the loop that the thing was going in before it went, because I was looking ahead. So it's like when you just want to get good, you try to be good, you failed, then you stop trying to be good. But if you try to be the greatest, good is not going to be a problem. Good is going to be like drinking a glass of water. It's going to be easy. You know, the great becomes the challenge. So you increase the spectrum, you increase the intensity. So let's say right now you're a musician. Okay, let's say right now you're a musician listening to this, okay? You look at your instrument. Look at your instrument in the face. In the face of the glory of, you know, all that music can be. You know? Look at your instrument and you will notice there is two ways of studying something. There is one way where you listen to what the past has said and you study the idea under the wings of past ideology. Do you know, shielded under the certainties of the past system. Or the rebel in you, it pretty much says, what if I learn to play the guitar and play the guitar in a way that has never been played before? Literally generate sounds with the guitar that the human ear hasn't heard before. Melodies or certain, you know, intuitive. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't play an instrument. You know, I'm still trying to, master whistling, guys. But I mean, I have played piano before. But I'm familiar with instruments. Like I've maybe once in my life I jammed, with an instrument, with a group of musicians. But it was like, what I'm saying is, you have to look and you have to find, playfully I'm saying find, not obsessively, not seriously, not in a pious, blind, religious, extreme way, you know? You have to find the moment where you feel no human being on earth has ever perceived this moment in this way. You will know it. Anytime. It's kind of like Frodo when he was going past the point where it wasn't the Shire anymore. He's like, "Yo, man, I've never come this far," But his mission was, his inner vision exceeded his fear of how far he went. So when I say fear not your speed, I mean, like, this doesn't mean like drive recklessly. Fear not your speed means your intelligence is immeasurable. You've been duped. You've been duped by thinking there's an IQ test. Whoever made the IQ test had an incredibly low IQ. Even if we think that IQ was high, that IQ, like, we got to change the number system of it. Because I'm telling you, human intelligence activates in accordance to what it cares about and is important for it. It's like if you ask Cristiano Ronaldo about soccer, he's an expert. If you ask him about like quantum physics, he'd be like, "What are you doing, bro?" you know. So that's the thing. That's the thing. That what is if this is the whole thing. All these interviewers you see on YouTube and TV, they haven't realized this. Just ask what is important for the person, and they will reveal libraries of it. Do you know? So what I mean is, like, the IQ test is so ridiculous as one educational system fitting 8 billion different DNAs, different eyes. Like, I think it's fair to say, even though we're physically appear as the members of the same species, our eyes are so different that if an alien came on Earth, literally we'd be like, okay, we're all aliens technically to each other. Do you know? That is why, like, you saw in, for example, in Italy or Spain, in some sense, there is a sort of romantic, I don't want to say mythology, but it acts as it. Do you know? And why is that there in their literature, do you see, in their events? Because human beings, it was like courtship was engaging the process. Do you know? That means it's like, right now, I think the system is that how would I say it? Like, we are looking at the flaws. There's a saying by this ancient poet, I think it was Shams. I don't know who it was. It was Attar, maybe. He said, if you want a friend that is flawless, you will be friendless. That means if you want someone to be a perfect missing puzzle piece to your mind, like, are you serious? We're a bunch of creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere that recently have attained some sort of conscious ability and sophistication to communicate. When I said, imagine 4,000 years from now, because I want you to not fear how far you can see. It is your birthright to see. And you might be a person whose your sight might not be accessible to you listening to this talk. You can even see. Do you know how vast and deep the inner realms are? Your mind is how you are simultaneously being the world of whatever self you see. And when I say fear not your speed, that means do not fear your control in the unknown. Most people look at the unknown and they're like, I don't know, man, I could lose control. I don't think I can do this. I can't get on this roller coaster. But then you realize it's like, what else is left? For me, I'm looking at this species of ours and I'm like, what else is left for us to do other than build an advanced civilization? That means you see the birds scattered around flying in different directions, or you see a miracle of nature like tons of birds flying in the same direction in the same wave patterns. Like, I'll post the video here for you guys. This is what, like, I want to see what these birds are doing. I want to see this on a human mind level. It is now the dawn of the modern philosophy. We're going to realize philosophers are going to become like the guardians of the human mind. Terence McKenna said something very interesting. He gave, while I find this video for you, I'm going to tell you. He said he was like pretty much in an auditorium filled with like professors and artists, art students in an art school. And the title of his talk was Opening the Doors of Creativity. And in there he said a statement that made such a huge impression on me. He said, Terence McKenna, the scholar, he said, the poets have failed us. And I was like, no, Terence, don't say it. You know, when I saw the video, it was like, and what he meant was that creativity is waiting for its own permission. No human being knows how advanced humanity can be as long as there's new human beings being born. Do you know, this is the biggest thing we got to realize about history. And one thing to say about what Terence McKenna said, the poets have failed us, I later on realized Terence McKenna was so wise, he also spoke about the archaic revival. So Terence McKenna in some sense meant that the poets have failed us for now. We have to literally create space for a more efficient and advanced civilization that is not afraid of higher speed and a sort of higher ethical approach and systemization. In certain sci-fi narratives, AI is running human beings in the future. Right now, human beings are telling technology what to do. There's a chance in the future technology is going to tell human beings what to do. You know what I mean? But regardless, it's all about that when you want to build an empire, imagine you're a king back in the day, and you want to build a kingdom, okay? First, you go and find these bricks, and you lay out the first prototype of the kingdom. And after you study the first phase of your own creative, the first wave of your creative expression comes, you display, then you study and you look into it, and it's a sort of opening up to a sort of fractalization, okay? That means you can suddenly look at anything and be like, whoa, what is this? I could look at this object and imagine it's being smaller than this or it being the size of a skyscraper. It's like that kid. A kid went to the UN and told the UN to stop smoking, and the UN was like, "Excuse me, little kid," and the kid's like, "You guys have to make the world quit smoking," and the people in the UN were like, "This little kid, what is he talking about?" And then they realized this little kid has seen the chimneys of factories as if they are cigarettes. And he wants to make the world quit smoking. You know? Whatever story you give it, the concrete jungle is not just where there is physical wilderness, there is ideological wilderness. Western society, it like enslaves itself in the day and parties at night. Do you see? It's not just Western civilization; it's Western culture. Many cultures are like this. But I'm saying, like, we don't ask the question of freedom while we have freedom. Gratefulness is the greatest awakening of memory. I'm telling you guys, you might not believe it. Most people look at this world, and some people don't have an opinion. They're like, okay, it's just something that's here, And some people look at the world, and they kind of see it as like, no, it's a chaotic system. We can't escape out of this simulation. And some people look at it, and they, in some sense, see where the world can go. The courage comes from the future self. It can't come from the past self. The fear comes from the past. The courage comes from the future. So when a person wonders about what is important, inevitably they come to the nature of their attention. And it's all about how content you are with instantaneous being while you're doing stuff in this life. What can I say? The speed will increase, and consciousness is the direction. So technically, living has a velocity. You have to give it a direction. Now, it doesn't mean, when I say you have to give it a direction, doesn't mean you have to paint the picture, lock it down in some sort of shape. I'm just saying that there will come a moment where both the inner child and who you are now will start staring at who you are becoming, you know? And when there is an instant in this life, you suddenly see the play of forces, you see the Leela of the elements of manifestation. Then you get what I say, the ultimate contentment. You don't fear the unknown anymore. Therefore, the future self, poetically, can talk to you now. And that future self is your emotions about what will happen in the future. I chose this picture not because it was one of the most incredible pictures I've seen, and it was on this random wallpaper site. So whoever the artist is, if you know, somebody please write in the description so I could, you know, this man deserves more attention than just my, YouTube page. Anyways, this artwork is incredible, and if you kind of make the screen full screen, and if you zoom in, you notice that it is the evolution of cities, as I've spoken about in some of my talks, phase 1 of Civilization 2.0, building sky cities. This is an incredible envisionment of its evolutionary path. And if you notice, guys, you see those cities that are upside down? That means we have mastered anti-gravitation technology in this picture. That's the most incredible thing. Opening your curtains and seeing the clouds and the world that is progressing beyond its sphere of birth. That means whatever you do in this life, you have changed since your birth. You have lived life already. Technically, by definition, it's impossible to fail in a collective process. That means I know the moment I opened my eyes in the morning, I was like, wow, I don't have to just get used to opening my eyes. I have to also get used to closing my eyes. And that's the wisdom, I can tell you. The wisdom of realizing the solitude of the naked soul upon a universe that it is endlessly projecting through. So you can say, Mr. Within wants the human species in some sense to pilot with the recognition that chaos and order are the wings of the plane of how the mind embodies itself as a character, as an extraction process from the story, from the setting. So what does that mean? That means light is entering your eyes, some unique neural work is occurring, and then this neural activity, it's as if light entered your eyes, it reflected out as your personality. It's like blaming people is like blaming light in your eyes on some level. Do you know what I mean? I want us to become a civilization that looks at this picture and would be like, all right, we'll be there in 30 years, you know? We have to envision this far. We don't have to just envision the civilization. You know, this is one of my guys. I have this. I feel I'm the founder of a very unique philosophy on the value on like I've shared certain unique views on my philosophy of science fiction. That you can't just. I mean, you have the potential to envision, especially in the inner realms, how the outer realm can look. So we can we can see in this picture how the future can look. But we can't see, or in some sense, I'm going to say it like this: we can, like forget the can't, we can simultaneously as we see the body of how civilization looks like, wonder about the mind. That means it's like we look at this picture and wonder about if a person was in one of those buildings, what would their psychology be like? How would they feel about technology? That would be a point where this, you see this picture, guys? This picture suggests a technology that has reached a master level of acknowledging. So one technology has ultimately been mastered. Anytime one technology is ultimately mastered, the civilization looks ahead of its time, but on some level, you look at other parts of it, it's not ahead of its time. You know? So one technology acts as the brain, or acts as the central force, central pusher of the advanced civilization. That means right now, if all the scientists in the world, all the scientifically minded seekers of the world, in some sense, were like, all right, let's all master sound technology. Suddenly, our sophistication and our understanding of sound went off the chain, you know, broke out of the roof, and it somebody's gonna be like, yo, Mr. Within, where are you getting these sayings from? From my inner realms, guys, you know. I'm just saying, it's like the psychology of the future is so fascinating because we can only step into it. We can become it. It's our birthright. Our future advancement as a civilization is our birthright. That means it's like if you're a parent, you don't have to just defend your family and kids and just your own institution. You have to defend the opportunity of the mind of the future generations to be way more advanced than us. That means, let me tell you what the strategy should be. The strategy should be that we look at the future and not want to succeed over it, not want to climb over the future, not want to be a god of the future. That's ignorance. We have to, in some sense, it's like, imagine a civilization where when someone fails, people don't say you deserved it. You know, when someone fails, the civilization says, "How dare you?" When the species, when you are part of how far the species can go. Muhammad Ali, you know, Cassius Clay, he was in some sense an incredible human being because he dared go further. Whoever you are listening to my talk, I have already saluted you if you have dared go further and advance the civilization somehow. It doesn't matter if the world sees you or not. If you have dared, if you have acknowledged, if you have seen, like imagine a coach, you see in those classic films, you know, where the coach is like sees potential in the kid and he's like, "Kid, just go for it. What are you doing?" And the kid's like, "I don't know if I can." And the coach is like, "Yes, you can. That's why I told you." You know, and the kid's like, I don't know. I doubt myself. And you know, and the coach at the end was like, "Just do it or you'll never get a chance to do it again." And that's the reasoning. The pros and cons list, that's how you get out of fear. The pros of confronting the moment, acting out. You know, believe it or not, any sort of action is an inner evocation, and an evocation ultimately is like an attack. Anything that uses energy to be an effort of expression is like sudden. So if you look at the concept of an attack, like in, let's say in fighting psychology, there's the attack and there's defense, right? So in any situation in your life, pretty much how physical engagement can occur is that something engages you first or you engage something first. You know, like you can say like Ip Man. You see, like, I mean, some, like the earlier Ip Man movies were a bit extreme. The dude was just breaking people's bones and giving them lifetime injuries. Like what kind of liberated master is Hollywood showing of Ip Man? Yeah. Well, but there is also the situation where Ip Man, when his students would challenge him, or some situation where someone would fight him, he would fight the opponent defensively. That means, do you know? It's like, how can I tell you? Like, it's like it's like fighting a giant. Okay, it's like that moment from Lord of the Rings where Theoden King defeats the army that's invading uh that that mountain kingdom Gondor, and they defeat that like messed up face creatures like army. But then Theoden sees these giant mammoths are coming, and then if you look at the face of the actor, incredible acting. Do you know the face of the actor is like, oh shit, you know that the actor is like a king. It's King Theoden, right? And King Theoden, literally, his face is like, what the fuck? Giant mammoths, really, Middle Earth, really, you know. But King Theoden, what he does is he looks at it, realizes he can't win, but he attacks, he engages, right? Sometimes you don't know what will happen. That's the beauty of any game. The person who has the mindfulness till the last moment sees the person who makes the least mistakes wins, not the person who does the right thing, you know? So reducing the potential of failure is better than chasing success. So it's better to wake up in the morning, I find, that to and one kind of be like, all right, instead of like I'm gonna chase, I'm gonna work hard and get what I want. You know, instead of having that kind of mentality, the person's gonna be instead like, all right, let me see what is preventing me from getting what I want or what I feel is the win-win, you know? I mean, of course, guys, every person, it's like manners, like, you know, it's like the same way it's manners to like not chew loudly when you're eating in public. Similarly, it's like manners, like, in some sense, it will be second nature, the unknown. You know, it's kind of like I like Beethoven has this quote where they say his last words were, "Applaud, my friends, the comedy of it was over." And I would say, like, if I thought of, like, okay, at least now, if I'm thinking what my last words would be, I mean, who knows what civilization would be by then, but like, I think it would probably be just like, trust the exploration of a lifetime. I was first thinking of saying try it out, but I was like, that's too simple. Like, that's culturally, like, great. It's like, what was the guy's last words? Try it out, man. Try out life. See what it is, you know? But for me, I'm telling you, we're all explorers at the end of the day, and every person has a different sort of function of sight. So technically, even though we're on the same Earth, we're different, experiencing different versions of the Earth. Communication is building a bridge between these words, and now the internet and the digital realm gives us access. Like back in the day, do you know how hard it was? Like the scribe had to, like, literally, like, the guy would find a scroll and he's like, oh man, like, there's no copy machines yet, photocopy machines yet. So the guy has to, in some sense, handwrite. It's like those, like the apostles of, even in Christianity, they were like scribes. They were like watching the truth, watchers of the truth. They were like transcribers of the truth. Do you know? That means it's kind of different, I think, but I'm just saying that human beings have cared for the mind of civilization by passing on knowledge. And when the person really looks at the circumstances of life, it's just good manners to continue. That means it's like this is something in Persian culture, which is I was culture shocked out of it, you know? Because the more you live in an environment, the more that environment is living in your mind. You're animating as with the voice of the environment in you. So in Persian culture, let's say a person makes a mistake in public. Let's say it's a gathering of people and a person makes a mistake in public, okay? there's a strange there is a strange artificial goodness where I could say it's like culturally it's kind of like people are living in an artificial utopia, but in reality, living in that artificial utopia is more collectively a better long-term strategy than kind of dismissing it. So what that means is, imagine someone's, I've seen this a couple times, in like a giant Persian gathering where somebody gets angry and upset at something. Maybe the guy drank too much and it suddenly heard one statement and got super offended. Who knows? What that circumstance was. But I saw the person get angry, and you know how people react? People in Persian culture, they act as if the guy hasn't made the mistake. They talk to him as if, like, don't even think about it. You know what I mean? Not at all. It's not a problem. Like, let me tell you, this happens in Persian culture everywhere. Okay, when you are the host and somebody spills, like a little kid spills like Coke on your carpet or something, on a rare carpet, right? The mother instantly runs to clean it up to actually get rid of the physical problem. Do you know, the mother of the kid? And in some sense, the host, in some senses, says, "Don't worry about it, I got it." And the host runs to clean the problem. That means they are both trying to get the moment back to a state where it wasn't problematic, where mankind was strong in the vision of what it could see, even though it had a sort of artificial lingo. But I'm saying, you know what I mean? That means, like, um, there's a certain time in life where you suddenly see the value of observing what you're being before you do anything. And there's certain moments in life, especially in youth, where the songs of excitement are just pulling you in different directions, and adventure is your own discretion to some degree. Right now, it's in 2020. It's like there's a unique event happening, like pretty much the Black Plague of modern times, which is like this coronavirus that is happening. I'm sharing it not because I care about it. I'm sharing it because it's like a historic event. Okay? And so you see the psychology of people kind of pushed indoors. And when you're indoors, you're left with yourself. So you can say the more it becomes dangerous, the world outside, the more we will be pushed inside ourselves. So the shyness of the future generations is a symptom of a civilization becoming more dangerous. And not dangerous in the sense, like, of course, when you look at our ancestors, they were killing each other with giant metal objects, with sharp metal objects. Right now we have a strange civility where people go sit down and it's like the savageness is not physical anymore. That's what being civilized means the savageness is dismissed because you can act in a more efficient way. Every moment of your life, there are two crossroads, the efficient and the inefficient. And it's a test of your own patience and observance of which one finds you. That means certain moments in life you gotta slow down. Certain moments you gotta speed up. Certain moments you gotta realize you gotta just stand on the terrace of how far you've come and just wonder about where you're going next. That's the whole art of piloting. That we're no longer just piloting outer airplanes, but we're also piloting our inner planes of subjectivity and conception. Mr. Within wants to see, like, suddenly it's as if like all the philosophers in histories have lanterns and each lantern has a unique color and they're running in the streets of modernity and people open their doors and their windows and they're like, what the fuck? they're like, oh my god, somehow all the ancient philosophers in our history books have come alive and they're running with strange lanterns with each their own color in the streets, you know? And imagine in that moment it becomes a situation where you're like, whoa, the new is the truth. And the new is about awareness of change. That means when you listen to Martin Luther King speak, it's not like you're listening to a person from a nation speak. It's like you're listening to a universal being speak. It's as if Martin Luther King, perhaps, I don't know if he ever shared it in his doctrines and in his ideology, the ideas he gave to the world before he passed away. But it was like, it was as if this is like I'm just, it's a hypothesis, but I think Martin Luther King, in his mind, in his imagination, saw a working civilization, saw the better option, and that's where the honest rebel is born. The honest rebel, you could not even be a rebel. And when I say rebel, I'm not talking about external rebellion. I'm talking about rebelling against how the past is defining the moment rather than how the future has its freedom. But the freedom also has freedom to make mistakes. The future has also freedom to make mistakes. Just like I did right now. So, welcome to the chat section, Dylan. Uh, so, guys, Dylan says, as a culture, this would be amazing for the people going within, but if this teaching was the foundation, I could only imagine. Dylan, the whole world is waiting for the rest of that sentence. You know what it is? It's like whether we like it or not, can we stop evolution? Can we stop time from conquering elemental organizations? No. Time has its wilderness. That means it's like, you know how it was like, what was his name? How did I forget his name? I don't think it was George Orwell. It was oh my god, his I could almost see his name. Let me find this. A Tale of Two Cities. Charles Dickens. There we go. Yeah, I knew there was like a HAR in there. So, A Tale of Two Cities. There's a very it starts off with a very interesting opening where it says it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness, it was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity, it was the season of light, capitalized. It was the season of darkness, with a capital D. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on it being received for good or for evil in the super superlative degree of comparison only. Okay, I think I read too much, more than I needed to. But really, guys, this is the thing. He says it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Mr. Within is saying it was the most efficient of times and it was the most inefficient of times. You know, most inefficient and the most efficient of times. It was the age of advanced communication and it was the age of utter objective ignorance. Yeah. Fear not your speed. Fear not your mind. Because you don't even know it to fear it, really. I think none of us know, like, on an ultimate level, on an absolute level, there isn't that much, like, stable grounding to stand on. On some level, we are like a mystery unfolding. We're like how the Zen master Matsuyo Basho says, the journey itself is my home. So it's like reaching a point where you're kind of like, you know how you imagine you're an artist and you draw this painting, right? And then you sit back on the couch and you look at the painting you just drew, you know? So that sitting back and looking at what you've done. Now imagine you sit back on the on the on the couch and you in some sense lean back and you look back at how manifestation has unfolded for you. So for me, this is why I'm saying knowledge can't be measured, because there's always the potential for new dimensions arriving through experience. So I may say something in one day and then suddenly have an experience that totally redirects, realigns my inner realms. Like if you listen to these talks throughout the years, I've kind of been conscious that I've been. It's like you can't live on this world, in this world, without changing. And if you don't want to change, then you haven't understood the 4 billion year old evolutionary opportunity we have. The issue is not everything changes whether you like it or not. You can pretty much just engage with it and experience it as it changes, or not experience it as it changes. You know? So you can experience living in an advanced civilization. You can care for your civilization regardless of your morality or whatever. You know, regardless of if you have a red lightsaber or a green one. It's like I remember a friend of mine once asked, like, My brother was there too. He asked like, what lightsaber would you have? And for a long time, I thought green. My answer was green. Then I later on wondered about, it's like, what would a complete, like how unique would a pure white light beam be? Do you know? Like a white lightsaber, you know? But basically, the lightsaber you choose, technically, it's like a lantern, so it's whatever light you want to see the most. Guys, lightsabers technically means Jedis should be blind. Wouldn't that light blinden them, you know? I don't know. Sometimes life, you look at it like an eagle on a branch. You look at it specifically. And sometimes you could be looking at it specifically for many years and suddenly be pushed into a more general view of it. For me, it's like if somebody said, Mr. Within, like, can you explain what knowledge is in 2 words? I would say go forth. That's the ultimate knowledge. Go forth. That means attempt to externalize your inner realms and understand that it's kind of like communication is right now we are like pioneers to people thousands of years from now, right? So right now we have complete permission to try. And it's like when you look at the ancestors, how they behaved, you're like, oh man, they could have like totally not killed each other. You know what I mean? You know? So you see that other option, but now you wonder what if the ancestor suddenly could notice that and history could have been rewritten. So what I'm saying is like your better option is always there, but after some point you can't access a better realm if you can't see a better self. That's the truth of it. It's like if you can't forgive yourself, you shouldn't expect people to forgive you. You know? This is why there's a sort of dishonor that comes from not valuing yourself as a human being properly. Like you from your own mind, your mind can get offended by the archetype. When we say it's kind of like this, it's like stress and depression and anxiety. It's arising because we're living artificially in the sense that temporary life will appear as a simulation. The fact that we're temporary beings, like the biologically, we're like, all right, simulation or afterlife. Like, what do you want to say? You know, the afterlife is like you wake up from the dream. So what does that mean? When you wake up, it technically means there was always more than the dream. So think of it this way, your whole life, your experience and your mind, it hasn't becoming less and less and less. The more you've lived on this world, the more like sensory processing power your intelligence has obtained. Okay? So technically, we have never experienced loss experientially. Experientially, it's just endlessly growing. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like every day is just new, new, new. Like it's kind of like we get to choose what we look at. Like how mind blowing is that? Sight gets to choose what it sees. I want to say this idea. I think now is the time to speak about it. I want to be honest, try something out. And I think I'm trying out something that no human being has ever tried out, at least in the way I'm trying it out. You know? And in the sense that I thought about human psychology, guys. Like some people, they went home after their, activity after their work, and they in some sense thought about, like, the gentleness of life and their pleasure and more hedonistic realities to entertain, you know? More the desire is free at home, but outside you have to control your desires. Indoors, in your house, your desires kind of, its cage is bigger. There comes a point where you get bored of the self. That means you notice every day you're waking up and you're like, yo, I'm this person. And then the next day you wake up and you're like, yo, I'm this person. The next day you wake up, oh my God, a new day, a new self. And then the next day you wake up, oh my God, I'm a new self. It's like, how many new selves can there really be? Do you know? So on some level, you begin wondering about what is aware of all objective and subjective phenomena simultaneously. And that's when mankind begins taking steps on this earth as a field of being. That means the world has a voice, but its voice is how your mind is moving instantly, in every moment. For me, guys, I have these certain moments of solitude where it's strange. It's like throughout my whole day, I can't even call it a prayer and I can't even call it a meditation. It's just a moment where in the middle of whatever I'm doing, I just stop. It's as if my physical moment suddenly there's not, no, my attention doesn't care about the physical for a second. And for a moment, it's as if standing in a room with the life of the cosmos simultaneously. The evolution of the individual beyond the whispers of the logos towards the actualization of the universal galactico archetype. That means it's like, just like how Iron Man's like, yo, what if I update my Iron Man suit? Human beings are like, what if we update our processing of all that we see? So we have fingers, Look at yourself as a human being. And on some level, you have to stand as a general alone on the battlefield, and your body, your physical body, your everything that you see, your intelligence, your memories, your visualization, your imagination, you have to be the first leader. You have to be the leader of your moment. But you don't lead it in just an inner realm way. That means leadership is not per se always ideological. Yo, this idea, let's go. Leadership is about who in the room is more aware, that is life sensitive, is aware that there is an experiencer there. It's like, don't just care for the body of your civilization, The mind of your civilization is in the making. And right now, the way we see the nations fragmented, I was like, if all the people's psychology, let's say a sort of aggregate psychology, Imagine instead of GDP, we had GDT, gross domestic thoughts. The GDP of a nation, the psychological inclinations of a species in a snapshot way. It's so fascinating that it's like our fear of the unknown is the biggest barrier to evolution. Fear is just not, it's like somebody, like, here, I'm gonna Google fear. Let's just see what the definition of fear is. Let's say you're a child who opens a dictionary and somebody tells you don't be afraid, and you're like, I don't even know what fear means. Let me go look it up. You're so fearless, you never even cared to see what fear is. So fear, as a noun, an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or a threat. So you can say fear is what may push you or pull you towards emptiness. For example, like a smoker, whether that person likes it or not, there is a subconscious fear that like of the void. But on some level, it's like how much can the writer fear the empty page? Eventually, the writer's going to pick up the pen and write something. So for me, when life became performance oriented, I cared to contribute to the mind of the civilization. When life was just story oriented, just any story, like as if like I could just wake up and be like, "Yo, I'm the king of the world," and I could just believe my inner realms and go on living. It's like the ignorance is a sort of metamorphosis of conceivable identity. That means in this moment, how I feel as a person is very different than like another moment where I feel as a person. And so, how do I categorize or compartmentalize these emotions? Do I say, like, if right now I feel like on Monday I felt like a being that was experienced a Monday, on Tuesday I was a different being, on a Thursday it's like the weekend. You're either one person tunneling through the weekend, or through the week, or you're in some sense a person who you're like every day is like a different uh, energetic experience of the mind. You know, at the end of all ends, we will realize we were always our beginning. That we are not here to fear how things can go away, but we are here to see how they can be here. You have to fascinate yourself in a way where the educational system failed to do. That means you gotta care about what is actually going on. That means any child on this earth, any parent who, if you see in your child's psychology, the child is like, everybody stop! That child, any young child that suddenly has the intelligence to stop the room and then to think clearly and say something, that child is incredibly advanced in their inner realms. Like, I'll tell you this thing about like a cousin of mine. I'm not gonna bring any names, but this cousin of mine he's like, this is a story of when he was like 7, and I was at my visiting my grandmother, and my cousins were there and whatnot, and it was like kind of seeing like this cousin of mine. My aunt would give him the phone. My aunt would give like a 7-year-old kid an iPhone. And I was like, whoa, like that's ridiculous. And I went to my aunt and I'm like, don't give that kid the phone. You don't know what the kid is going to see. You don't know how the phone is going to introduce the world to the kid, or what is normal or what is real, you know? But my aunt was like, she acknowledged me somehow in that moment. But then I saw every day, not every day, but like later on when I would see my cousin, he was wearing these giant glasses, and his head was like an inch away from, like the child was too young to know how close to hold the phone to its face. So this is why I'm saying, like, literally treat your children psychologically like a Spartan. You saw in the movie 300, like the father was like, "Son, I'm sorry, you can't come home, unless you jump backwards and kill a wolf in the rain. All right, that's the only way you're my son." And the son was like, "Yo, no problem, Dad, I got this." And the son does this and becomes like this king, right? So it's the situation of you don't destroy someone, you challenge them. When you challenge them, they have to come to their senses. Your mind is like the conductor stick in your hand, and it's once in a lifetime. Nobody can update your eyes, only you see what you see. And when I say you see what you see, like I've made it clear by now, that the meaning, like if two people see an artwork, why does it mean two different things to those two different people? Because those two different people are choosing to be different. Because when billiard balls like are thrown at a table, when you break the cue, like it's like it becomes a sort of collision, an interaction of systems. It's as if the cosmos like makes the room messy with manifestation, then cleans it back up, then makes it messy, then cleans it back up, and we're like, oh my god, are we like the laundry of the gods? Like, I mean, I'm being silly there. What I'm saying is, like, we shouldn't be afraid of the multidimensional. We should pilot through it, and we should develop systems. And I feel language is going to go towards a geometrical direction. And I feel I was born to kind of like share with the global tribe that you shouldn't fear geometry and you shouldn't connect it to stories. That means the divinity of the geometrical shapes was that when you look at life as a designer, there's no good or bad. It's just phenomena happening. It's just designs. It's like the scientist, there's a reason the theoretical physicist writes different words on the paper compared to a psychologist. The psychologist is trying to, in some sense, discover the black hole in the inner realms of the person. You know, the scientist is trying to understand and comprehend and explore the black hole outside of the person. You know? So that means the grand mysteries of the inner life and the outer life and the simultaneity and the middle way where we are in some sense, I think rather than we're good and bad people, we are people first, and then we have access to these dimensions. That means there's good always going on, and there's bad always going on, and it's a yin-yang universe, you know? And so, on some level, it's at the end, you're left with the circle. So, you can say a person's intelligence unlocks when they literally pull the curtains of certain fears that they will inevitably realize. And the best way to confront a fear, guys, is like this. You know, anytime I've been afraid, I've been like, what would a person like in a more advanced civilization do? And I'd be like, it wouldn't be to like be paralyzed with fear. Now, even though life is intense, and fear should not necessarily manifest. It's like a healthy body shouldn't be sick, right? And you should say a healthy mind shouldn't be afraid of the unknown. Because you have that not being afraid of the unknown is just preliminary. Then you become fascinated by how far we can go and how much information there is that literally we don't have words for. Because on some level, if you don't care for who the philosopher is, really philosophy has nothing left. The thing that makes philosophy fascinating is that they were the eyes of authentic people attempting to see something else. Not something else, something that was like you saw the surface of the ocean and only when you kind of dived you saw the depths. So sometimes in life you will never see the evolution of a certain vision unless you dive into it, and you can't dive into the ocean without trusting the unknown. Imagine the first person who ever saw water, like a lake, like a still pond. The person, imagine first human being that ever saw water. That human being touched the water and was like, whoa, whoa, too unknown. Like it blew the mind of the creature. I'm pretty sure like the primitive human being, biological prototype was like that, you know? And then the creature had to trust the water, and then it entered the water and experienced totally new sensations. You know, we can totally just say that we evolved not because of just some mysterious intervention or because light hit the earth or because of this. We could say the moment the human being entered water, a sudden dualistic pattern began being set into motion. You see, so psychology, it's like eventually it becomes like everybody's trying to put shapes for the emptiness. The Zen masters are like, yo, it doesn't have a shape, you just have to accept it. You know, and so I don't know, it's like in Buddhism, they call this the three jewels of Buddha. And it's acknowledging impermanence, imperfection, and incompleteness. When you realize, like, whatever you achieve, there is always a higher level. So it can't all be about everybody work hard till the day you die. There's something more. that needs to be there. So I'm not just saying we should all become like workaholics of an advanced civilization. I'm like, we have to at least ask the right questions. And that question comes from the confrontation that it's okay to be advanced. Who said that just because a person makes a mistake, they can never do the correct thing after? Who said? And even in all the religions, it's kind of strange, right? Isn't it, guys? That it says man can make a sin, and man, when he makes a sin, you see, he in some sense goes to hell. But check this out. But it's also said God is all merciful and for all forgiving. So just think about that. Why do you need to do anything when it's all forgiving? Do you see what I mean? That means I don't even understand the religious explanation for how an extreme activity could be necessary. Because it's like even if you are a religious minded person, you're like, okay, something has to be like this, and anything that deviates from this is wrong. Right? Like that's the view. It's like you feel you found truth earlier than everyone else. But but you tell me, what is the truth of a heartbeat? You see, here's the thing. There's fear. I've learned this at least through my life. Because when the word fear is in the title, it's obvious where the talk's going. See, fear is the unknown. And the unknown means you have to act as your raw self. And your raw self tends to be unfamiliar because the person's familiarity is with the artificial. So it's as if you're living inside a world, and when the world inside the world stops simulating, you suddenly are found in the actual world. Okay, and the actual world is a strange, I say, attributeless wasteland. That means sometimes when you wonder about like why do people care, then you're like, it's just freedom. Freedom is like it's like the soil, and genius is kind of sprouting from the soil. Guys, I've developed this community called School of Athens 2.0. For a long time, I was thinking like, okay, what do I do? And I realized like I've had this vision for a while of starting a school of advanced communication. Pretty much I thought of like what if there was this library where every human being journaled how their experience or what their inner realms were, and all the creative works of the human being were stored in this massive library. Imagine like a bunch of billionaires decided to save the mind of the world, you know? So what that means is every person, imagine like, and the library is just by the name of the person. So my name is Amin Jabbar Ansari. Like you would go, for example, in this future library, you would go and see under my name everything I said in some sense, like I wrote. You know, you see all the books and the archives. And I was like, we have to start caring for the minds of people, and the minds of people are living a life. And right now, dear human being, it's like the civilization is not that advanced. It's like fax machine advanced. Civilization 1.0, every time I think about civilization, how it's happening now, it's like fax machine. It's like, why do we have a fax machine when we have 5G? You know what I mean? Like, so it's a totally different situation. Technology revolutionizes our archetypal reality, like pretty much like that kid who wants to, or any human being who wants to use an advanced technology, you in some sense, by the nature of touching that technology, are using it. And waking up in life, it's kind of like you are already in the system. So right now, it's like I sometimes wonder, I'm like, what if everything I see is an effect of my mind causing something? That means that what if like we're designed to never know how our intelligence is caused? And so the concept of design always brings like, yo, then who's behind the door of the door of the door and that door beyond that door? You know, who's beyond the door of all doors? You know, what is the mystery of all mysteries? In other words, there has been times where literally I shared in these talks that when I speak, my experience comes across as like there's a river of images, a river, not like an old school uh, projector, but there's a river. I see like an inner film. Okay, in my inner realms, I see a film, and then when I see that film, when I have observed it enough, then I just put words to it. That's kind of like how I speak, you know. I speak with a mind that is moving through image first, then language and whatnot, you know. And I reached a point where I was like, what can fear give me? Fear just keeps you from seeing what it could have been. That means, like, I don't know, it was strange. Like, my grandfather on the maternal side, he was like this industrial man who was like, had this, like, I don't know, leather factory in Iran back in the day, you know. He was like a pioneer of the leather industry in Iran, one of the big giant leather factories there. So he was always like holding himself in a high light. And then I asked him like about like his wisdom or something, you know. Sometimes a good thing to ask, just like your grandparents, it's like, grandparents, give me some wisdom. And then you just hear what they say. And as they say it to you, their wisdom becomes real to them, you know. There's no such thing as really a comfort zone and a non-comfort zone. It's like I'm telling you, it's just an occurrence. Life is just happening. And we are literally our own bubble of what's happening while it's happening. I want to kind of say that in the inner realms, I've spoken about it being evocational. So when I'm talking about speed, because it's like appearance, image appears, image is gone, image appears. I think it's pretty much with every inhale, exhale, there is like an on and off switch of image arising, no image arising. I think when we inhale, images enter our minds. I think when we exhale, literally, the image, it becomes more like a dark room behind your eyes. I think it definitely has to do with our breathing. Like the human psychology, everything in nature, the heartbeat is dualistic, you know, light and darkness is dualistic, you know, you have two hands, two eyes, you know, two nostrils. You're kind of, like the biological being has a sort of strange symmetry. Like sometimes I looked at nature and I'm like, oh my god. Like I was convinced by objective evolution the moment I realized, look at our symmetrical hands. So at some point in your inner realms, like, you know, anything can animate. So many options. I drew the system where it was 24 ways there can be a relationship with the known and the unknown. Guys, I'm pretty much a writer who's behind on his writing, and just for archival reasons is sharing it earlier. You know, I think it's a good time to go into a quote tunnel. A quote tunnel is a segment of these Mr. Within talks where pretty much I look up a theme or I look up like a person in history and I just wonder about how did their mind sequence language. Do you know? And of course many sayings, the way they're said in one culture and it's translated changes, but the conception doesn't change. That means when you read a book as if you're trying to read at a speed where it appears to you like a film, like a film in your inner realms, that is one of the most advanced things. Now, I personally let that film of my inner realms happen from an auditory way, you know, or of course, visual way is accessible for everyone. But anyways, in this quote tunnel, I want to read these quotes in history. Pretty much Google these quotes about fear. Let's just go with the theme today. So, 73 inspirational quotes on fear. All right, guys, let me check the waters before I read it. Yeah, this is definitely a good one. All right, guys. So Anaïs Nin, and Anaïs Nin is a great writer. If I remember correctly, I think I know her from short stories or something. She's one of the people that I don't understand why people in feminist culture, like, you know, and at least how the feminist movement appears currently, they don't consider this. They don't consider that the work, it's not about man versus woman, it's about greater man versus greater woman. And what that means is the civilization should not be at war at itself, with itself. We don't want a sort of gender civil war in the species, okay? That's ridiculous. You know, we want us to realize that we exist. The most efficient win-win situation to exist is, in some sense, whatever you are, those around you are seeing you in your greater self. I want this kind of thing that it's like, even if you see a young child play, you don't hide the reality from the child. Like if the child fails, you know, I think anytime any child that goes in an experience, let's say you're watching your kid fall down in a soccer game, the best thing is to bring the kid aside and be like, how do you feel? You know? And the child experiences consciously, says the truth. If the child is crying, it's crying. You let that emotion happen, and then you ask again from the child, how do you feel? And the child, again, you know, looks at itself, and the whole point is that for children, this is why parents have to be careful. For children, their inner realms are not separated yet from the outer realms. So what I mean is that a child can be pushed in their inner realms early and no one can take them out of their inner realms, because like this is what happens when a child on this earth is ignored. That child feels it is invisible. When the child feels it's invisible, it stops trying to live like an advanced human being. Do you see what I mean? So it's like this. I don't know, guys. I'm kind of like weaving this flying this towards a direction where ultimately we can't run. It's like, where are you going to run to? And to be honest, guys, I don't know how people see it, but I think this is more like kind of based on my Eastern upbringing. But really, what are you going to do? Like you see, like the biggest fear is non-existence, is it not? And so you see everything in this system stretching from the leaves on the tree, you know, to the melting snowflake, you know, to the cyber simulation in the future collapsing, you know, to whatever is in some sense kind of shouting that everything changes, right? So we want to build a civilization where we're all like tourists in manifestation that want to create the greatest experience of that tourism. So an advanced civilization It doesn't just care for its own, it cares for its own eyes. You see? So anyways, guys, I'm going to read these quotes. Ananian says, people living deeply have no fear of death. People living deeply have no fear of death. That means living deeply means it's beyond your fear, means your conscious mind and unconscious mind are not separate. Fear is really what keeps the veil of thought there. And it's the fear of not something good or bad, it's the fear of absence. So most people don't do things or don't let themselves be decent in society because they fear what they may lose if they do. But I'm telling you, just be honest, and in the future you win. You know. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, when a resolute young fellow steps up to the great bully, the world... Oh, when a resolute young fellow... When a resolute young fellow steps up to the great bully, the world, and takes him boldly by the beard, he's often surprised to find it comes off in his hand, and that it was only tied on to scare away the timid adventures. That's true, guys. That means we're all living way more gently and relaxed in our inner realms. So any sort of violence is just a demonstration. So all the thugs in the world are performers. They are demonstrating some sort of externalization of their inner realm values. Do you see? But they're externalizing it savage. It was like, I saw this on this Joe Rogan podcast where Joe Rogan was like, I think interviewing this UFC fighter, and this UFC fighter was talking about like how the UFC fighter, like in his childhood, he was bullied. And then what he became like this rich like UFC fighter. Then years later when he went back home, a beggar asked him for money on the street, and he saw this beggar was this kid who would bully him, right? And so, and what guys, bullying is pretty much chaos, disturbing order. That's what it is, really, on some level. But the order is not like, let me tell you, when you're on a battlefield, there's no bullies. There's just victory. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying that this person on Joe Rogan podcast, just to continue the story, the guy sees the bully, and the bully is like this homeless person. At the end of it, I think in the Joe Rogan podcast, he says he gives the kid, the bully, like $100 and tells the bully, like, I don't know, he says something to the bully, right? And like he helps the guy who didn't help him, right? Now, the way the homeless guy in the future, in the past, would bully this kid was in the school bus. He would pretty much like beat him up, and then like in front of the girls he liked, he like, kind of pull down his pants and all this. And you can say for a young kid, like after a certain level of intensity arises and they can't maintain it, savageness occurs. It's kind of like of something, there's pressure on the body. If that pressure is sharp and it keeps going, it hits a wound. So if there's an intensity for a mind of a person where they can't control, and they're taken by overwhelmment, their interpretation comes from their unconscious mind. Okay? Their unconscious mind is like, just like how you have, like, you're like, open your eyes right now, you see like how you see what's in front of you, you see how you have a peripheral vision. It's like as if you have your mind has eyes too, but its peripheral vision is the unconscious, it's the unknown. So your mind is moving in this world like a light, and your body is like this program of form. And life is way more mysterious than we can ever know. So on some level, we need 8 billion minds, like 8 billion birds being rhythmic, flying rhythmically. We need 8 billion minds to build an advanced civilization. I feel there is no greater game, again, to play than this. So anyways, that bully, in some sense, the guy on Joe Rogan, he was saying later on they found out that his father went to the bully's house and realized that the father of the bully beat the shit like 100 times, way more worser than how the bully would bully him. The father was beating like the bully. Do you know? And when he realizes this kid at a young age was abused to such a degree where abuse was a way of communication for him. That kid who's bullying in school, that poor soul, has no other way to communicate, hasn't understood the joys of the civil mind, hasn't realized the joys of observance. So you see, that's the point I wanted to get across, really. And it was fascinating that people don't just communicate through language. They're communicating, and I don't want to say regurgitate, but they're communicating, they're expressing what they have seen be expressed, or what is accessible consciously to be expressed. Anyways, let's go further in this quote tunnel. Fear is the main source of superstition, and one of the main sources of cruelty. To conquer fear is the beginning of wisdom. Bertrand Russell. Carl Augustus Menninger. Fears are educated into us and can, if we wish, be educated out. That means you have been, like, it's as if your conditioning is you have stepped into a sort of ideological structure. You can step out. You are the freedom of an endless sky behind your eyes. The sky is made of the mind. The body is made of the earth. And we can, in some sense, the soul is the dance in between. James F. Byron's, like F. Byron's. Too many people are thinking of security instead of opportunity. They seem to be more afraid of life than death. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I'm going to post this for people in the chat section. This quote is literally deserves to be in the Museum of Language. That's the thing. That fear of life is the wasting of your potential, and the wasting of your potential is really how much you care to actualize what is important. That means, imagine the person's like, what's the purpose of life? And the guy's like, listen, man, just ask yourself what's important for you, honestly, and walk towards that. Take slow steps, controllable steps towards that, and see what happens. You know? Rudyard Kipling says, of all the liars in the world, sometimes the worst are our own fears. Bam. This was like a knockout. This quote's wisdom was so incredible, guys, that even UFC fighters are like, yo, that was good. Rudyard Kipling said that, sometimes the worst are our own fears. The worst liars are our own fears. James Stevens says, curiosity will conquer fear even more than bravery will. This is another Hall of Language quote, guys. Herman Melville says, ignorance is the parent of fear. William Allen White says, I am not afraid of tomorrow, for I have seen yesterday and I love today. And that's really true, guys. When you care about something, it's as if the world's mind has to abide by how you're interpreting it, Not it has to. I'm saying behind your eyes, there is a strange freedom of reinterpretation. And that reinterpretation is occurring from the presence of a witness that Mr.Within is saying is like a field, it's a process. Isha Upanishad. In the Isha Upanishad, the guy forgot an H here. It's Isha Upanishad. It's a Hindu scripture. So guys, the Isha Upanishad, this mystical ancient text, says who sees, it says who sees all beings in his own self, and his own self in all beings loses all fear. That means the moment you realize you're more than something that can be lost or found endlessly in like this loop of incarnation, you know what I mean, that the Buddhists consider, the yogis consider, it's like you lose fear because you see what's going on. You turn the light in the room and it's like, how could you be afraid of the darkness? Seneca, Seneca says we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, do the thing you fear and the death of fear is certain. Wow. That quote had like nice geometry, guys. It had such nice geometry that I feel I should read it one more time, you know. Do the thing that you fear, and the death of fear is certain. That means either fear kills you or you kill fear. And I don't want to use the term kill, but it's like pretty much you defeat fear in battle, or fear defeats you in battle. And fear is your eyes not being bigger than they can be. That means it's like, imagine you semi-open your eyes and you're like, yo, I can't see the bigger picture. Of course, open your eyes, you know? It's like the Buddha was like, yo, wake up, everybody. Buddha was like an alarm clock for that catalyzed the human subjective evolution, you know, Buddhist teachings. Milton, just a guy named Milton, I guess. I don't know if it's the first name or the last name, probably last name, but Milton, some soul on this earth that walked this earth named Milton, says, where no hope is left no fear. Okay, so this is a good one, because it's puzzling me. Where no hope is left no fear. So that means the death of hope is the death of is the birth of fearlessness, I think. Fearlessness. Yes. He's where no hope is left no fear. This dude is riddling it out. Where no hope is left no fear. So he's saying, yeah. It makes perfect sense, guys. He's saying when you've hit rock bottom, there is no rock bottom left. The concept of rock bottom, the concept of fear and failure ends when you see it. It's like, you know, it's much more rewarding. Literally, you feel better afterwards when you stand your ground and see what happens. Then you change because like the wind pushed you. George R.R. Martin. So you can imagine any character from Game of okay, probably Varys is saying this. Oh, Tyrion is probably saying this. I don't know. Maybe like Brand is saying this. I don't know. George R.R. Martin says laughter is poison to fear. Wow. Yeah, because laughter means you have looked at the environment and now you are not. It's pretty much the aftermath of confronting the fear. And this is, I think, this quote that we're left here is Japanese proverb. So guys, there might be in the future someone named Japanese and someone whose last name is just proverb, you know. Imagine like Canadian proverb. There's a kid named Canadian proverb, you know. I don't know, guys. I'm being silly. It's 5 a.m. here. Anyways, the Japanese proverb is fear is only as deep as the mind allows. Very profound. That means fear can only go as far as your imagination goes. Then at some point you're just left with having to explore the unknown. Dale Carnegie says, instead of worrying about what people say of you, why not spend time trying to accomplish something they will admire? Dale Carnegie says, Oh, sorry, I read that. Henry Ford says one of the greatest discoveries a man makes, one of his great surprises, is to find he can do what he was afraid he couldn't do. That means it's so much worth it while you're a temporary being having an attempting the great, that it's like I don't understand why more people are not attempting great things. And when I say great, I mean literally it's going to go there in the future. So literally your future self doesn't have the fear you have now. Think about when you were a kid, you were afraid of the darkness. Then it's like, you know, then you're at a point where you're like, yo man, I gotta get new curtains, lights coming from the outside, you know what I mean? So it's like you evolve from the fear. That means it's never even the same fear because you're never in the same kind of moment to have the same fear. So it's a reaction to an event, which is impacting. So it's like an outer event is causing a much more deeper inner event. So it's overwhelming. So when you just kind of like it's of course, guys. Any person who's entered a jacuzzi has been like oh my god, this is like an evolution of sensation, you know. But then it's like you get comfortable, you adjust, you grow in beyond the fear, pretty much. But your mindfulness again, your will is your own discretion. Your free will is your tool in your hand. You know, your ability as a human being. Franklin D. Roosevelt says the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That's right. That means one of the founding fathers of America, if I remember correctly, he in some sense is saying like Franklin D. Roosevelt guys didn't fear fear. Helen Keller says avoiding danger. Helen Keller, guys, she's like an incredible human being in the sense that like she had certain disabilities, but she shared a wisdom that even now in 2020 I'm reading. Like she did something so intense that it echoed in history. She overcame what appeared to many as impossible. And she says avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. The fearful are caught as often as the bold. Eric Hoffer says you can discover what your enemy fears most by observing the means he uses to frighten you. Yeah, that's messed up. Benjamin Disraeli says fear makes us feel our humanity. Yeah, that's a not very nice quote. Fear makes us notice the reality of the situation, so we notice our actual humanity. Peter McWilliams says to overcome fear, here's all you have to do: realize the fear is there and do the action you fear anyway. This man was too cool for fear, you know. Marcus Aurelius, guys. Marcus Aurelius, a conqueror of his age. He says if you're distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but due to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Arnold Glasso. Yeah, I think Arnold owes a glass to someone. No, I'm joking. Arnold Glasso. I don't know who it is, guys, but his quote seems interesting. He says, fear is the lengthened shadow of ignorance. Okay, definitely this man is a great poet. Who probably owes someone a glass, you know? Fear is the lengthened shadow of ignorance. What does that mean? That means fear exists because of ignorance. Ananin says life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. Wow. Your courage is really how much you're willing to engage a world you're in once, pretty much every day. It's like they're like, how do you overcome your fear? He's like, the person's like, I just slept and I woke up and it wasn't there anymore. It's like, wow, man, great method to overcome fear. It naturally just stops being the same fear. Care for life, guys. It will care for you. That's what I've understood. That's the secret language of nature. It's the language of hearts seeing each other at their core. You realizing it's not just the breath in the lungs of the human species that's valuable, but it is the breath in all animate life. Do you know there was a time, guys, in my youth, it was easy. It was easy for me to, like, get a hose and wash away these ants, you know? Now, I don't know, like, maybe those ants survived, maybe they didn't, maybe it was too intense of an event. There's some spiders, guys, it broke my heart once. There was a spider in my window, and I had this pen, and the spider was still. I saw it move and suddenly be still. Then my pen, I tried to move it slightly, like a micro movement to the leg of the spider, and the spider died. It got shocked. And I was so insensitive in that moment that it was for the first time I felt the sin of a giant not seeing what it had stepped on. You know, the guilt of the advanced species that is meant to be responsible for these life forms, but we're using them as a food source? What the fuck? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we have to find a more advanced strategy. And my personal strategy through Civilization 2.0 is that we build sky cities and we let the earth breathe. And phase 2 of Civilization 2.0, where is Earth Heaven now, where we heavenize Earth, and this is pretty much Mr. Within strategy for a species to endlessly bypass extinction. We have the first tool. It's strange. It's like Thor's hammer is in the hand of our species. It's our technological innovation. You know, and it's our consciousness. These are two divine weapons that the universe was like, you human being, you might not be Superman, but I gift you with observance, and I gift you with expression and with the freedom to know that you in some sense are allowed. Because it is as if like greatness and it's like efficiency and inefficiency are sitting in a room, and you are choosing who to talk to. You are choosing what to look at. And when you realize fundamentally the meaning of life is your choice, the individual conscious argument, that means something I was like, oh my God, how could Jordan Peterson, when he was debating Slavoj Žižek, you know, as a psychologist, Slavoj Žižek looks at Jordan Peterson, Jesus Christ. Guys, a moment of prayer for the emergency that we hear in the background noise of this talk. A moment of caring for your species' advancement. Not a moment of silence where we grieve. A moment of silence where we realize the contribution of the fallen. We are all playing our part in this cosmic chess game between the known object and the unknown beyond this object. I find myself in the tunnel, in the quote tunnel again. Ralph Waldo Emerson, I don't know if I read this, but I'm going to read it again. Fear defeats more people than any other one thing in the world. Wow. That means, you know, it's like kind of, this quote has parallels to Wayne Gretzky, you know, saying that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That means if you don't try, you don't see who you are. If you don't do new things, you can't be a new person. If you don't attempt to see new things, it's like you're seeing the same thing. You see what I mean? So it's like there has to be a inspiration. So Jordan Peterson, when debating Slavoj Žižek, all he had to do was say that when I look at the world, it's different, and when you, Slavoj Žižek, look at the world, it's different. You know? And then it would be a situation where you would see we have to start from individualism, because how we're being an individual is suggesting what kind of collectivity we want to be. So right now, when I look at 8 billion human beings living in a civilization, I'm like, there's 8 billion versions of civilization going on. There's 8 billion dimensions and growing. Every person being born in the system, they are kind of like how this poet named Robert B. Pirsig, he in some sense said it's like we enter this life and it's like our awareness, our consciousness is like a handful of sand from this endless beach. So I'm saying it's like the Buddha had this example where it's like one elephant and a bunch of blindfolded people kind of touching the elephant. You know what I mean? From different parts. One of them thought it was a stone column, one of them thought it was a wall, one of them thought it was a curtain, the ear of the elephant. You know what I mean? One of them thought like it was like a couch. I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Like, and yet it was one elephant. And it's kind of like there is one moment where the dance of self and world is occurring. So, anyways, guys, that was my commentary on their debate. I just wanted to get it in there, you know, in this talk. Aristotle says fear is pain arising from the anticipation of evil. Dale Carnegie says do the thing you fear to do and keep on doing it. That is the quickest and surest way ever yet discovered to conquer fear. Rosa Parks, I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with fear. Robert Louis Stevenson says, keep your fears to yourself, but share your courage with others. Joseph Campbell says, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Guys, there's so many of these, I'm just gonna see how many I could get in there before I get tired. William Shakespeare says, in time we hate that which we often fear. James Hastings says, fear is the needle that pierces us that it may carry a thread to bind us to heaven. That's an incredible one. Henry David Thoreau says, when I hear music, I fear no danger. I am invulnerable. I see no foe. I am related to the earliest times and to the latest. Nelson Mandela says, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. That the brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. And that's another way of saying it, is like, don't fear your own unique retaliation. Like, there was a time where I was depending on the world to direct my attention, and then I realized it's a privilege of a lifetime for me to direct it. That means independence is glorious when it gives you access to dimensions of experience. You know, it's like there's so many different lives being lived that it's like novelty is the best way to live new, whatever it is. Esquilia says there are times when fear is good. It must keep its watchful place at the heart's control. At the heart's controls. Wow, I'm going to end off with this, guys. Plato says we can easily forgive a child who's afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. That's when human beings are afraid of their advanced civilization. And I'm going to share one more quote from Lee Brown. He says, if you're not willing to risk, and guys, if I remember correctly, Lee Brown is like this next level motivational speaker. He says, if you're not willing to risk, you cannot grow. If you cannot grow, you cannot be your best. If you cannot be your best, you cannot be happy. If you cannot be happy, what else is there? So in other words, he's saying if you're not willing to try something new, you can't see something new, you can't grow. If you can't grow, if you can't see something new, you'll never see what your best was. If you can't see, if you can't be your best, you won't feel happy because you'll be like, oh man, I could have done more, you know? And he says if you can't be your best, you won't be happy. And if you can't be happy, what else is there? So Lee Brown is doing something ingenious where he's making happiness synonymous with the word best. Usually for me, I'm making the concept of an advanced civilization synonymous with the word efficiency. That's my method, at least. That's the path I've decided to take. Um, and as always, Robert Frost says the best way out is always through. And I'll share one more. Marcus Aurelius, it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. That means more than you should be worried about non existence, you should be like, whoa, I'm existing right now? Let me go see what this is. Let me go comprehend what it can be, or what it will be, or how it will be. In the tech sector, they say the best way to predict the future is to build it. So right now we're in a building phase of civilization. The most value is in building the new, not repeating the past like artificially intelligent people will before they built artificial intelligence. You know? And guys, I'll share one more quote. It's from Usman B. Asif. He says, fear is a dark room where negatives develop. That means once you confront fear, you see the other side. And Confucius, yeah, of course, I can't read this many quotes without Confucius making an entrance. He said, if you look into your own heart and you find nothing wrong there, what is there to worry about? What is there to fear? That means your own decency is a sort of uh, heaven on this earth. So, anyways, guys, I'm gonna end the talk here. Thanks for tuning in. I'm gonna open it up to Q&A. So anybody who has a question, feel free to ask. Any comment, anything you want my opinion on, like if you want me to kind of like share because for me after some point it's just not the evolution of concepts, it's the evolution of efficiency. So like in my inner realms, guys, I saw geometrical shapes move without my will, and that astonished me. That means I notice I have this ability to visualize, like for example, a three. Imagine right now, you like the person has an ability to visualize a cube, like let's say a blue glowing cube. Okay, now in my inner realms, I could visualize this cube moving like a candle flame, flickering like a candle flame. Okay, so that movement, that observation of, like, I notice I can move in my inner realms, and then I notice the outer realms to the inner realms are an effect. That means when you close your eyes and you're like, who am I? You're kind of like your own source. But when you open your eyes and you ask, who am I? You're part of this long evolutionary process. You see what I'm saying? So the mystery still stands, and every person, unfortunately, civilization is not like this, but I will tell you that there's so many children nowadays. It was mind blowing when I realized there's this video game that has 85 million people playing it. And I was like, what the? Like, I was like, 85 million people are living cyber lives. That's an incredible achievement of the human being. At the same time, like a whoa, 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 getting close to like destruction there, I feel that if you're a billionaire listening to this, you should quickly create a quest-based institution where any person who solves that question, solves that problem, and you make that a global problem. So pretty much we need to make the global problems of our world like games that children are so good at playing, so incredible. That means we should create video games that are trying to handle world problems. That means it's an incredible thing, because Elon Musk spoke about simulation theory in the sense that there's 1 billionth of a chance of its possibility when our gaming technology, or just our generally we can say a technology, whether it's gaming or not, will appear where we can simulate something that is indistinguishable from reality. So that's the point I wanted to make, guys. Anyways, Q&A is open. So the Forever Journey, nice name, man. The Forever Journey says, thanks for all. What's your must-read book list? Ah, I wish you had asked the question differently. But let me tell you, I have a shaman's approach to books. Since my childhood, it has always been like this. I've had a shamanic approach with information, with just phenomenological design to some degree. And what is that? And later on, I realized it's like I'm saying shamanic because the shamans did something similar back in the day, you know. And what it was like there's the kind, there's this story of this shaman. This who, in some sense, they asked the shaman, "How did you learn your shamanism?" And the shaman was like, "My father was this next level shaman, and he was at the age of 3. His father just on his dad looked at his son and he's like, son, I'm like these plants also leaving. And the father looks at his son and says, the word was right here, says, listen to the plants. The shaman tells his son, listen to the plants. Okay? Listen to the plants. And this shaman, his father passes away and he's this year-old kid and he ends up becoming this next level shaman, healing ridiculous amounts of people, with his shamanic practice. It's like, and his reasoning was, he's like, I listen to the forest. I listen to the presence and the spirit of nature before I am who I am. That means that dude was literally in such a pure, thoughtless state to be able to hear the voice of nature direct him exactly which plant is needed. That means he was not a doctor of prescribing medicine. He was a being helping a being. He was a doctor in the sense that he was the whole moment of being, whole moment of being's intention. So with books, I mean, I'm a bit of a maverick. I just go sometimes, like I remember when it came to Tibetan Buddhism, like in 2013, I got introduced to Tibetan Buddhism and it blew my mind, it fascinated me. And then I went to this library, this kind of like place, not library, this bookstore called Chapters. And I went into the bookstore and they had this incredible section where it was all just read books and it was like Buddhism. There was a tag on the top and it was just Buddhism books and I just danced. So let me tell you what I mean by dance. I literally was like, all right, I'm going to go randomly touch books without even pulling them out and see what they are. All the books were read, and I'm going to touch these random books, and these are going to be the ones I'm going to buy. It was literally the quickest shopping I ever did as a human being. As a person, as a man, it was like I just went in there, touched a bunch of books intuitively, and just grabbed those books, and I was like, all right, these are the winner. These are the winners, These are the chosen books that I will let my mind engage. And I, went, and those books, believe it or not, because I had just spontaneously chosen them, I went home and it surprised me. That means I think it's better you get a book that you have no clue what it's about, That means, then it surprises you. And then I had this habit ever since. It's like, I think most people are like this, where, so I don't know, some people just open up a random page of a book. Like I would say books are like filled with imagery, right? So if you open a random imagery and kind of playfully as a kid imagine, like I imagine this, like the book was like, I would open a random page and that's what I was destined to see from that book, because I was like, I didn't want to read the whole book, so I would just open the book and I just see a passage. But if the passage was interesting, I would go study the skeleton of the book, the content section. And when you see the content section, the titles of a book, the content section are are like pretty much the writer being like, what's the most important thing I want to show the reader, right? So for me, I would say it's not about just even reading books. It's about realizing the book is an ink on the page. It's your own fascination of wanting to know something that really evokes, animates the reality. So a book list, the forever journey. I mean, I don't know if you want me to give you a book list that goes on forever. But the mind is kind of like an endless world generator. So you have the option. If you don't have access to books, study your mind, read your mind on a daily basis. Just observe how you're being phenomenology, how reality is occurring, right? But if you want to know which books to read, like certain books I've personally read, there's this book in Buddhism called A Clear Mirror. That book revolutionized my vision. The Bhagavad Gita, this is a book that it's a ancient scripture kind of religious book that this next level rishi sage mystic named Rishi Vyasa wrote. But to read that book as a psychologist is fascinating. To read the Srimad Bhagavatam and just imagine if God had a conversation with an archer on a battlefield, what would it look like? You know what I mean? So yeah, guys. So how the best books to like here? I think pretty much the best decision is realize the environment has a voice, and its voice is how the entropic nature of reality really. So on some level, find observe a moment that you can trust, and then navigate. Or intuition would kind of become a cartwheel. Like we don't want that happening. We don't want intuition being too boring and too cool. I just want people to be like, all right, it's worth seeing what it is. What the unknown really is, and man's relationship with the unknown. Another book I would recommend is my own books, guys. I'm kidding. I have this policy where I kind of like to just put the artwork out there, whoever is drawn towards it. But I don't know, guys. Just trust the moment. Let the moment choose. This life, sometimes a very shortcut to freedom is to give freedom. Do you know what that means? That means like being beside another person and letting them be free. Do you know? And of course, society is like a harsh place, and it's a concrete jungle, and you gotta wear, you know, uh, expensive leather jackets. We gotta kind of look like, Let me tell you, it's all a performance that has endless audience members. My fear of speech really went away when I realized history is my audience. You know, that means I am speaking as if like the future generations have already heard it, and I'm counter thinking to what they may think. Like I'm kind of playing with that sort of view. So, anyways, yeah, trust the moment, see where the moment takes you. Adventure is born about with a step that is unknown, really. So, guys, it's still Q&A. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to, you know, share with the world you're in once. It's like some people thought sharing is caring. Sharing is evolution, guys. Sharing is advancement. And really, we are an information sharing civilization, right? I mean, like, that's pretty clear. Like, we get excited by wondering about how else the world can be perceived. For me, it's um, let's entertain that notion where it's like 8 billion people who each are experiencing their own dimension of the world. These 8 billion people are, we have to care for our archiving their inner realms. That means, like Mr. Within is asking every human being, write at least one book in your life, and in that book, give yourself full freedom to share your inner realms. Think as if sometimes when I wrote a book, like when I was writing, like I didn't have writer's block because I felt like, let me tell you why. Because it's like when you're writing for the future generations, you're attempting the ultimate. When you attempt the ultimate, you can't hold back. When you can't hold back, you are directly in the rhythm. And the yogic wisdom, the mystic wisdom for illumination is study the self. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, this guy has this quote, he says, when I see that I'm nothing, that is wisdom. When I see I am everything, that is love, and in between my life moves. This dude is not he doesn't see himself as a person. He sees himself as an oscillation between fullness and emptiness, and the conscious awareness of the simultaneity of chaos and order's codependence is literally the soul's remembrance. So anyways, guys, fear not your speed or the Q&A portion. Guys, before I end off, I'm kind of feeling like sharing one last kind of poetic glance. Our eyes open to the eyes of our mind. The eyes of our mind open to the inconceivable sky. The inconceivable becomes the journey of the unknown. Jesus Christ. Sorry guys, fire hazard. Guys, just a recommendation for anybody in the future. Don't buy candles that have metal frames. Don't buy candles that have small metal frames. Because the metal gets hot. Do you know? So if there's some sort of plastic or something, it starts burning. So just, I would say that, I don't know. Jesus Christ. We put down the fires. I don't know, guys. It's like sometimes there's no promise of reward. There's just the what if inspiring you, you know? Anyways, guys, I think I should bring this talk back down to earth. You know, complexity comes from simplicity. And what else can be really said after you reach the simple? It's just abidance. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to be accessible in the chat section, but I'm going to end the talk for here. Thanks.